In this video, I'm going to quickly walk you through the basic economic model that economists use to talk about demographics. It's one of my favorite models because at one level it's absolutely ridiculous. The idea that we could use economics to talk about how many children a family might have seems kind of crazy. But at another level, it actually works incredibly well. It's very powerful, and it really does a good job of explaining the patterns of population growth that we've seen over time. The model starts with the pretty silly assumption that somehow there's a demand curve for children, that each family has a marginal willingness to pay, or a demand curve for their kids, and there's some sort of downward slope to that. And so as you get more kids, you're willing to pay less for each additional child. Then on top of that, we have a marginal cost curve. So each child that a family has increases costs, and I've assumed that the costs of each additional child go up, maybe because the space constraints get tighter in the household or things like that. But anyway, so we've now got a marginal willingness to pay and a marginal cost curve, and so families would optimally choose some number of children, say C star, that might be 5 children or might be 2 children, whatever it might be, so this is the basic idea, that somehow households are making this trade-off between their marginal willingness to pay, their demand for children, and the marginal cost, or the cost of having additional children. And why is this powerful? Well, clearly on an individual level, it doesn't make too much sense. A family doesn't go about and come up with their marginal cost curve and their marginal willingness to pay curve and decide how many kids to have. But over time, we have seen that the demand for children falls in almost all countries. Why might that be the case? Well, you can think about it from the perspective of a rural family that is using their children as part of their labor supply. And as they get more money, they get more machinery, and all of a sudden those children are not so required for harvesting the crops or working the land, feeding the animals and such. At the same time, we see the marginal costs are also going up, particularly as we get into industrialized or urbanized situations, where all of a sudden now you've got to deal with the fact that you've got smaller households. You can't just let your kids run out all over the neighborhood. You've got less space available for them. You've got to pay for books at school, etc., etc. So our marginal cost curve has gone up. Our marginal willingness to pay curve has gone down. The result is that we've now got a new equilibrium for the number of optimal children that a family might choose, that's gone from C star to C double star, which is in this graph a substantial reduction in the number of children that a household might have. And what's interesting is how this fits into sort of the historical patterns that we've seen in the world. You've read about the theory of demographic transition, and an important part of this theory of demographic transition is that in stage 3 there's a pretty sharp decline in the birth rate. And so we can think about how this might take place in terms of our economic model, where the birth rate is falling because there's economic growth, because that's leading families to choose fewer births. Furthermore, this has played out very, very well historically in terms of real populations. Here's some aggregate data from a lot of major regions of the world, and you'll see that in all regions, the total fertility rate, that is the number of children born to each woman on average, has fallen. In Latin America, for example, we've seen a substantial reduction. From 1970 or from 1980s, it was over 4 children, and we're now very close to 2, which is 2.1 is usually thought of as the replacement level of fertility. So we're close to near zero population growth levels in Latin America. Of course, we've still got sub-Saharan Africa there at the top, which has substantial population growth because of the high total fertility rate. But even there, you see declines in the total fertility rate as economic outcomes have improved. So I like the economic model of fertility because it tells us an awful lot about how things might really happen and makes use of the basic tools that we study in environmental economics.